Today, we are talking about the truth about Satan and Lucifer. Now, I just released a video called Lucifer is Not Satan. If you haven't seen it, I recommend that you go watch it. But if you haven't seen it, it doesn't matter. What we're doing today is we're taking a deep dive on the archetypes of Lucifer and Satan and seeing how they differ and how they affect the conscious mind, how they have been transformed throughout history. And we're also taking a look at how Jesus Christ is actually the one who's referred to as Lucifer, or the morning star, in the New Testament. So we're going to be unpacking the truth about Satan, the truth about Lucifer, how it relates to Jesus Christ as well, and just doing a very deep dive on this and how these archetypes have been used to control consciousness and control the mind. So that's what we're jumping into today. It's going to be really good. But before we do, please like and subscribe, because my channel is about bringing information to the world and helping people reach a higher state of consciousness so that we can create a new humanity and a new earth. That's what being Neogenian is all about. So when you hit like and subscribe, I know it just seems like a little thing, but it tells the algorithm to spread this around, and more people see it, more people discover this information. So please take a minute, a second, not even a minute, half a second even, to do it right now. I appreciate it. Also, if you enjoy my work and want to help me create bigger and better content and reach more people, support over on patreon.com/MorgueOfficial. It's the best way to support my work, and you'll get access to all of our members only videos. We just had a members only video last week on the afterlife and how the afterlife is a matter of logic, not a matter of faith. Very interesting. So anyway, support at any tier on Patreon or tier 2 or higher on YouTube by hitting the join button below this video to access all our members only videos. Couple more announcements. If you haven't already, please follow me on Spotify by searching for Dawn of the New Earth. Follow me on Spotify. You can find these videos there in podcast format for your listening and viewing pleasure. And again, it helps get this information out there. And remember, May 16th, my new book comes out. The first of 5 new books I will be releasing this year, all about the Neogenian system. This is called Neogenesis, Dawn of the New Mind. So mark your calendars. May 16th, it begins. All right, so we're talking about the truth about Satan, the truth about Lucifer, what these beings are, what these archetypes are, how they have been used to manipulate consciousness throughout history, how they've been transformed to represent forces that can either liberate or control the mind, because that's what we have to really understand. When we're talking about these beings, these aren't just characters in some story. They represent structures in the mind. They represent aspects or forces that exist within ourself. That means Lucifer, God, Satan. These are all different energetic structures that exist within us, and we need to understand how to use these forces within us. But let's take a look and see how this has been transformed throughout history, what this means with regard to the Bible. And the first thing that I want to do is take a look and see what a UCLA professor says about this. Now, as we take a deep dive here, we're going to take a look, and let me put this on the screen so everyone can see it. Now, this is on a website called phys.org, called What the Devil? Prince of Darkness is misunderstood, says UCLA professor. So what we're going to see is that not only has Lucifer been twisted, but Satan has been twisted as well. So as I pointed out in the video that I released a few days ago, like I said, if you haven't watched it, go watch it. Like I pointed out, the name Lucifer appears 0 times in the Bible, unless you have a New King James version of the Bible or a version of the Bible associated with King James. Then it appears only 1 time, and it appears in Isaiah in reference to a Babylonian king. They call a Babylonian king, they call him Lucifer, but really what this should have been translated to is morning star. So it is referring to the planet Venus. So if you open up almost any translation of the Bible in Isaiah, it doesn't even say Lucifer. It says morning star, or it says day star, or some variation of star of the day, something along those lines. And this wasn't about a being in heaven. This was about a Babylonian king, and they were calling a Babylonian king morning star as a metaphor for his bright rule and how it was coming to an end. So that's important to understand, is that the name Lucifer wasn't even in the Bible, except once in certain translations as a mistranslation. But this became adopted by the church. So before we get into that, all right, we're going to take a look at Satan, because Satan was also twisted as well. You see, Satan, if you're familiar with Christianity, or even if not, Satan is such a prominent archetype, you know that he represents all things that are usually evil and is seen as the enemy of God, God's adversary, the working against God. But as we'll see, that wasn't Satan's original role as shown in the Bible. What Satan was actually more like a prosecutor in a courtroom, and he was actually working for God and not opposed to God. And we'll see this right now. So let's start reading this. Let's take a look at this. Let's unpack it. So this is a quote by the UCLA professor. It says that there is little or no evidence in the Bible for most of the characteristics and deeds that are commonly attributed to Satan. So Henry Angsar Kelly puts forth the most comprehensive case ever made for sympathy for the devil, arguing that the Bible actually provides a kinder, gentler version of the infamous antagonist than typically thought. Quote, "A strict reading of the Bible shows Satan to be less like Darth Vader and more like an overzealous prosecutor." Like I just said, not this evil being wreaking havoc and destruction, but working for God as a prosecutor, like in a courtroom. So one thing that we have to understand here is that the archetype of Satan has transformed over the years. And it's interesting that the writer here, Henry, mentions Darth Vader, because let's talk about archetypes for a minute. These beings, these entities, these ideas, these concepts represents structures in the mind, structures in the psyche. And so when we think about Darth Vader represents the same archetype as Satan, as we know him now, not as originally intended, but the way that humanity views Satan now is the same archetype as Darth Vader, where you could also say it's the same archetype as Sauron in Lord of the Rings. Now, obviously, Darth Vader doesn't really exist. Obviously, Sauron doesn't really exist. And guess what? Satan doesn't really exist either. But they are all aspects of you. Satan, Darth Vader, Sauron represent the will to dominate. It represents control, domination, will, power. All of these ideas are attributed to these beings. And this is why a lot of people become enamored with these characters, like, let's say, Darth Vader. Like a lot of people like Darth Vader. Why? Because they like the idea of having power. And so these are all aspects of ourselves that can be actualized and worked with, and that exist inherently within ourselves. And we have to learn how to use them in a powerful way, which means we have to acknowledge both our light and our darkness. So when it comes to, let's say, the archetype of Satan, the archetype of Satan exists within us. We can't get rid of it. We can't destroy it. But what we can do is transform it and alter it and reorient it. And so what I mean by that is, like, take the will to dominate. This satanic archetype or power or energy that exists within us, this will to dominate, can be used in a lot of negative ways. However, we can transform it by focusing on the self. And what I mean by that is, you can, instead of trying to master and control and dominate others, you can use that power instead to become master of yourself, to be in control of yourself. So do you see, you're taking that archetypal pattern, you're taking that archetypal energy of power, dominance, control, and you're directing it to a productive area. That's what integration is all about. Most people aren't integrated. And so what that means is that these energetic structures exist deep down within all of us. And people who do not integrate them are just controlled by the unconscious forces. If someone has this will to dominate and control, they're just going to go out there and screw a bunch of people over and treat people like shit and try and climb this ladder or whatever have you. The point is, though, is that they're being driven unconsciously by this force. What one wants to do, and this is all in the Neogenian system known as interstar actualization, it's about becoming aware of this. So when you become aware of the structure, you can reorient it. You can use it in a positive way, which means instead of just being driven unconsciously by this force, you realize, hey, this force exists within myself. It can't be destroyed. It can't be gotten rid of, but I can direct it. So how in my life can I direct this energy in a positive way, in a transformative way, rather than a destructive or a harmful way? That's what true integration is all about. It's becoming conscious of all these unconscious drives, of all these archetypes, and getting them to work for you instead of controlling you from behind the scenes. So it's about harnessing these powers. And so Satan has come to represent these aspects of, will, domination, control, power, etc. Now, if we take a look at Lucifer, Lucifer is actually the exact opposite when it comes to archetypes. So Lucifer, like I said before, the name means morning star or light bringer in Latin. And what this symbolizes is the first light of the dawn. The reason why it stands for the first light of the dawn, or was originally associated with that, is because Lucifer is the name for the morning star or Venus. In other words, the name Lucifer refers to not some being originally, but it referred to the planet Venus, which appears bright in the sky just before the sunrise. Just before the sunrise, you can see Venus bright in the sky. So Venus became known as the morning star or the light bringer or Lucifer. And so this began to symbolize what, the first star in the morning associated with the planet Venus. It began to symbolize the first light of dawn, which often stands for new beginnings and hope. So even though many stories talk about Lucifer falling from heaven and being an angel, that's not originally what it meant at all. That's just what Christianity has concocted. The early meaning of Lucifer was associated with Venus and the day star, new beginnings, new dawns, first light, hope, which is, you can see, complete opposite of the archetype of Satan, which is a dark archetype. And Christianity equated the two archetypes. They made Lucifer equal to Satan. They said Lucifer is Satan, essentially saying these ideals associated with Lucifer are evil. And so, Lucifer is also associated with knowledge and understanding, and these all became off limits. But I digress. Let's read a little more here because I want to lay out these ideas further. But I just wanted to put out the idea of archetypes. I have a lot of videos on archetypes, by the way, if you're still a little confused on the topic. Archetypes, I think, are confusing for a lot of people, but they're actually very, very simple. I know you probably have heard me say this before, but a great way for understanding archetypes is thinking about a smartphone. If you think of your mind like a smartphone, archetypes are like the apps on your smartphone. They all have a different function. Some apps are to take photos, others are to listen to music, others are to edit videos. They all have a different function. They also have an icon and a name. Now, the icon and the name just stands for what they are. It has nothing to do with what they do. You can take any of the apps and change their name and change their icon, and they still do the same thing. So whether we talk about Satan or Darth Vader or Sauron, these all stand for the same app, so to speak, within yourself, within your mind. And whether we're talking about Lucifer or Jesus Christ or Sophia or Prometheus, they all stand for a different aspect of your unconscious psyche. And the goal is to get all these to work together in harmony because there's a plethora of archetypes. Now, in interstar actualization, if you're interested, We simplify all this by boiling it down to 3 archetypes: the shadow self, the mirror self, and the power self, and how to get all of these archetypes to work together in harmony so that you can accomplish your will and allow us to create a new earth as well. Anyway, but I'm getting off topic. Let's continue. But you see, this is really important to understand. We need to really get beyond just like, oh, the stories in the Bible, and realize why it's important to understand these things, why these symbols have been used to manipulate consciousness. If you make Lucifer, light, knowledge, understanding, evil, then you can create a system where people don't question, because questioning is sinful. It's prideful. It's of the devil. And you see how these are very powerful at manipulating consciousness. So understanding them properly helps free consciousness. So anyway, Henry, the UCLA professor, says that a strict reading of the Bible shows Satan to be less like Darth Vader and more like an overzealous prosecutor. So before Satan became associated with the archetype as we understand Satan today, Satan had a completely different role. He wasn't that evil, destructive character. Oh, I'm sorry. Wait, is this Henry? Oh, yes. Henry Kelly. Okay. Henry Kelly says he's not so much the proud and angry figure who turns away from God. His intention is to uncover wrongdoings and treachery, however overzealous and unscrupulous the means, but he's still a part of God's administration. So in other words, Satan isn't the enemy, the great enemy of God as he's depicted in Christianity today. Originally, he worked for God. He was part of, as Henry says, God's administration. He was to uncover wrongdoings and treachery. Again, very much like a prosecutor in the court. The prosecutor in a court of law is part of the court system and has a role to play within the court system. The prosecutor is not trying to destroy the court system. The prosecutor isn't trying to destroy the rule of law. So likewise, the original goal of Satan wasn't the destruction of God. He was working for God as a prosecutor, an accuser. So the article continues by saying, this view runs in opposition to the beliefs held by many Christians and others about key religious concepts like original sin and the nature of good and evil. If Satan isn't really in opposition to God, he isn't really evil. And that means the fight between good and evil isn't an authentic part of Christianity. And what I'm saying will be scandalous to some people. So Christianity needed fear. And this is why Christianity brought in the idea and really started emphasizing the idea of Satan and hell. In the Old Testament, hell doesn't even exist. It's a place called Sheol. Hell as a place of eternal damnation and punishment was a kind of new invention. And so you bring in hell, you bring in the devil, and this instills fear. So now you have, it's operant conditioning. It's the carrot and the stick, where the carrot or the reward is heaven. And the stick or the punishment is hell and eternal damnation. Of course, and Satan being equated to the ruler of hell. So when it comes to the Old Testament, Kelly insists that Satan's profile is considerably lower than commonly thought and significantly less menacing. By Kelly's count, Satan only appears 3 times. Satan only appears 3 times in the 45 books that make up the pre-Christian scriptures. The best known being in the book of Job. And if you're familiar with the book of Job, it's a really screwed up story. It's a terrible story where there's this faithful servant of God named Job. And Satan appears in the heavenly courts. And God's like, hey, Satan, what are you doing here? And Satan was like, hey, I've been going around the earth looking at all the people who say they follow you, and this person, Job, I forget exactly how it goes, but essentially says, Job only follows you because you give him a good life. If he didn't have a good life, he wouldn't follow you. And God basically goes, okay, I'll tell you what, go screw with Job as much as you want. And I bet you that he won't, and he won't falter. His faith won't falter. So God allows Satan to go and basically torture this guy. Not only does he torture this guy, but I think he kills like all his kids and his wife. Just horrible. The most worst things you can possibly imagine. Just because God wanted to be like, hey, look, see? He's really faithful. Now, to be fair, afterwards, it was like, oh, and then God gave him tenfold what he had before. Like even more kids and a better wife, I guess. But it's still really screwed up. It's still really... You killed the guy's kids and his wife and you tortured him. Like that's just to prove a point. Really crazy. Anyway, that's one of the stories that Satan appears in the Old Testament. So on each occasion, which is 3, according to Kelly, 3 times in the Old Testament, Satan is still firmly part of what Kelly calls God's administration. And his activities are done at the behest of the big guy. But his actions aren't evil so much as consistent with the translation of devil and Satan, which literally means adversary in Greek and Hebrew. So his job is to test people's virtue and to report their failures. That is the role, that is the job of Satan, to test people's virtue and report their failures. Like, yeah, he's still not a great guy, right? He's but he isn't what Christianity made him out to be. This is almost, the main villain or antagonist to God. And remember, we're talking about Satan right now, not Lucifer. So you can see that they altered Satan to become this grand enemy of God that's intent on leading souls into hell. And not only that, but they equated the Luciferian archetype with Satan, making light, knowledge, wisdom, and understanding become evil, sinful, and off limits. That is, making questioning sinful. Eating of the tree of knowledge became the original sin in Christianity. So did you know, by the way, for those who don't know, I grew up a Christian. I was a Christian for many years. I have religious trauma syndrome, RTS, all that. Not very fun. Very much opposed to mainstream religion. Does a lot of damage. So Christianity teaches that the original sin is eating from the tree of knowledge. And that all of humanity is infected by this original sin and is doomed to hell unless they repent to Jesus Christ. So essentially, everyone is doomed to hell for eternity because of knowledge, except if they bow down and worship Jesus Christ. And of course, the church will tell you just how to do that and, what kind of donation you need to be super saved. And so it says, perhaps the most surprising is not the figure Satan cuts, but his noticeable absence in the Old Testament. So in the Bible's first reference to Lucifer, for instance, so now we're talking about Lucifer. We talked about Satan. We saw how Satan was originally an accuser, like a prosecutor, but he worked for God. He was one of God's, administrative duties. But he got transformed into this archetype of total evil. Now, we're talking about Lucifer. In the Bible's first reference to Lucifer, for instance, Satan doesn't appear even by implication. Lucifer is Latin for light bearer, and he was the name given to the morning star or the planet Venus. So Lucifer means morning star and was associated with the planet Venus, not the devil, not the accuser at all. Completely different thing. Originally written in ancient Hebrew, the passage on face value refers to the tyrannical Babylonian king who boasts of his conquests, but who is about to be cast to the ground. So even when, like I said before, I think I mentioned this in the beginning, when the word Lucifer appears, it appears in reference to a Babylonian king. They're talking about a Babylonian king who's about to be cast to the ground, and call him Morning Star as a metaphor for his rule that's about to come to an end. So not only is Lucifer related to Venus, but the one time that it appears in the Bible as a mistranslation refers to the Babylonian king, not some heavenly being. So, ironically, now this is very, very interesting. So Origen says Lucifer is said to have fallen from heaven. Kelly explained, this can't refer to a human being, so it must refer to Satan. Subsequent church fathers found this reasoning persuasive, and so did everyone who followed them. So basically, it's basically like a game of telephone, essentially, when it came to Lucifer being associated with Satan. And then it started becoming depicted in a lot of literature and art, like Paradise Lost, things like that. But originally, these beings are total opposites. And remember, when I say these beings are total opposites, we're talking about the archetypes that they represent. All right. It's like saying that the, Notes app is completely different from the video app. I mean, that's not a perfect analogy. That's not really opposites, but they're very different. So Satan and Lucifer Satan represents will, power, dominance, control over others, whereas Lucifer represents wisdom, hope, light, understanding, a new dawn, new beginnings. Total different, complete opposites. Now, what also is the fact is that the Luciferian archetype is also represented by Jesus Christ. Jesus Christ and Lucifer represent the same archetype. Jesus Christ, and I mean the true message of Christ, not the way that it's been twisted by the church, but the original message of Christ, or at least the message of Christ that we can interpret it as, meaning about raising one's consciousness, understanding that we are all. So the Gospel of Thomas is a great way to see this positive understanding of Christ's teachings, where Christ says the kingdom of heaven isn't anywhere up in the sky or under the sea. It's not a place you go to when you die. It's inside you and all around you, meaning it's a state of mind and a place that we can create. This is our kingdom. Heaven is inside of us and all around us. It's up to us to reach it and actualize it. Also, Christ said that we are all sons of the living Father, and we will understand that we are sons of God, that we're all sons of God. It's not that Jesus was the only son of God. We're all sons of God when we look inside and realize what we are. When we know ourselves, Christ says, when we know ourselves, we will know that we are sons of the living Father. And of course, this isn't a gender thing. It applies to any person, regardless of their gender, but I'm just quoting how it's said in the Gospel of Thomas. And so Christ and Lucifer are the same archetype. And it says right here in this article, ironically, the only mentions of Lucifer in the New Testament, and there are 3 of them, refer to Jesus. Kelly said, Jesus is called Lucifer or Morning Star because he represents a new beginning. So most translations say morning star, but it says Jesus Christ, the Morning Star. Right? If you look in the New Testament, Jesus Christ is called the Morning Star 3 times. But if you translate Morning Star as Lucifer, it would be Jesus Christ, the Lucifer. Lucifer being the Morning Star. Another prominent omission in the Old Testament, Kelly said, can be found in Genesis. Nobody in the Old Testament, or for that matter in the New Testament, ever identifies the serpent of Eden with Satan. Kelly said the serpent is just the smartest animal. Yeah, that's another big misconception. Everyone associates Satan as being the serpent in the Garden of Eden. But if you read the story of Genesis, nowhere is it said that Satan is the serpent. It just says that there's a talking serpent. that tells them to eat from the tree of knowledge. It does not say anything about this being Satan or Lucifer for that matter. Now, very interestingly enough, if we look in the secret book of John, in the secret book of John, Jesus says that he was the one that caused Adam and Eve to eat from the tree of knowledge. Jesus Christ says he was the one in the garden that caused Adam and Eve to eat from the tree of knowledge. You see, again, associating Jesus Christ with these archetypes. Now, we always have to remember, these stories didn't actually happen, because people will get on there and argue, be like, well, was it really Jesus in the Garden of Eden? And was he, or was it a snake or what? These things did not happen, but they are archetypal symbols and metaphors that can be used to manipulate consciousness. It's like Star Wars, right? It's like Star Wars or Lord of the Rings or The Matrix. Star Wars, The Lord of the Rings, and The Matrix are perfect examples of highly archetypal narratives. And so obviously we know that The Matrix and Lord of the Rings and Star Wars is not real. Of course not. If people did believe that it was real, then we would have, a religion for each one, and people would be fighting over whether, the prophet Obi-Wan or Gandalf was the true prophet, or was it actually Neo? And there would be wars and whatnot over all this. But the idea is that these are powerful stories and powerful narratives that didn't actually happen, but they can be used as and to manipulate consciousness. And I think sometimes people have a hard time. Well, what do you mean they can be used to manipulate consciousness? Just look at the history of our world and all the, bloody crusades and inquisition and destruction that we have had because of the power of these stories. So the important thing to realize is that this stuff didn't actually happen, but understanding the symbolism behind the stories can be freeing to consciousness, especially if one takes them to be true. One can start to realize, hey, these are just symbols. Hey, these are just stories. They actually represent forces within us. We all have the power of Lucifer. We all have the power of Satan. We all have the power of Christ. We all have the power of Sophia. We all have the power of Prometheus. We all have these different energies within ourselves. It's up to us to activate them and integrate them and use them in a healthy and powerful way. So Kelly says, this is what I call the new biography. Let's see here. So in addition to linking Satan with the Garden of Eden, the passage from Revelation also has been used to prove that Satan fell early on in the Bible, but Kelly insists that this isn't accurate. So this is what Kelly says about Satan's mention in the book of Revelation. Satan's ouster from heaven in Revelation is explained as taking place in the future, Kelly said. In Revelation 12:10, a voice says, the accuser of our brothers is cast out, overcome by the testimony of martyrs. Well, since there were no martyrs until Christ died, that has to be in the future. Similarly, a passage in the Gospel of Luke, when Jesus reports having seen Satan fall like lightning, has been misinterpreted. According to Kelly, Jesus saw the fall in the past because he had the vision the day before he describes it to the apostles, Kelly said. But Jesus is referring to a future fall of Satan from his position as God's attorney general. This is not to say, however, that Kelly contends that Satan is likable. Jesus doesn't like him. Paul doesn't like him. He represents the old guard in the heavenly bureaucracy, and everyone longs for him to disbarred as the chief accuser of humankind. So basically what Kelly is saying is that Satan wasn't intended to be this dark, evil being like he's represented today. He represents the old administration. He represents having a certain position in the old administration. And Jesus Christ, when he says things like he saw Satan fall from heaven or Satan fall like lightning, when this is a referring to the future when Satan will fall from his position as God's attorney general. So, Kelly's certainly not saying that Satan is a likable character, but he represents the old structural ways of doing things, the old guard in the heavenly bureaucracy, and everyone wants him to be disbarred. So he's not a likable character, but he's not the vicious villain that he's portrayed as today. So when we look at these different archetypes, we have to really come from an understanding of what archetypes are and how they have been used throughout history to transform and manipulate consciousness. And this is very important because so many people get ensnared by these archetypal stories. And Christianity, especially, has equated many positive attributes such as knowledge and understanding and reason and wisdom as being associated with the devil, sin, and darkness. Thus, it becomes off limits and used as a system of control. So we have to free ourselves and free our minds. And remember, all of this is a war of the mind. Everything is a war of the mind. It's a war of consciousness. It's a war of archetypes. It's a war of symbols. People get really obsessed about, oh, did Jesus really exist? Or are the stories in the Bible true? Or what? None of that actually matters. What matters is understanding how to reach higher levels of consciousness by understanding yourself better. That's why in the Gospel of Thomas, Jesus says, hey, there's a secret in this gospel. And when you understand it, you will never die and you will become astonished and rule over everything. And what does Jesus constantly say in that gospel? Know thyself. When you know yourself, when you look within, you will understand everything. So all these secrets that people are looking for don't exist in any external narrative or some story. They exist within your mind. They exist within you. And all you have to do is look within. And that's the last place. Humanity has been doing this for thousands and thousands of years now. That's the last place that people look. But it's the first place that we want to look for a true new beginning, a true new dawn, a true new light, so that we can dispel all the evil, chaos, and destruction in this world and build a world of equal opportunity for all that is focused on maximizing the quality of life. And that's our goal. That's our new beginning. That's our new dawn. That's the Neogenian. So I hope you enjoyed this, my friends. It's really interesting to see how these archetypes transform throughout history. If you haven't already, check out my video called Lucifer is Not Satan. Highly recommend that you check that out. And I have a lot of videos on my channel that talk about these ideas. So go take a look. There's a lot there. Please like and subscribe so that we can spread this information around. It's very important. And consider supporting my work on patreon.com/MorgueOfficial to get access to all our members only videos, or tier 2 or higher on YouTube by hitting the join button below this video. And remember to go give me a follow on Spotify, Dawn of the New Earth. I appreciate it very much, my friends. So thank you all so much. I want to give a big shout out to everyone who supports, especially Renaissance Fairy, Cassidy, Angela, the Halloween Mom, DB, Fashida, Nusalina, Eric, Christopher Smith, Joel Swindle, Thomas, Ryan, Taylor Made, everyone else. Thank you all. I do have another name that I need to add to this, and I will do that next time, but I appreciate all of your support. Thank you all so much.